The rain wasn't letting up. It had been one of those nights where the city seemed to weep alongside you, a relentless downpour that blurred the edges of the world. My phone, a dying ember in my hand, showed 2:17 a.m. and a 3-star rating for the dive bar I'd just stumbled out of. Home was miles away, and the last train had long gone. Uber it was. The app buzzed, confirming a driver named Silas was on his way in a beige sedan. A minute later, a car pulled up to the curb. It wasn't beige, nor was it a sedan. This was an older model, a dark, bruised blue, its paint job flat and dull under the streetlights, giving it an almost ghostly presence. The driver, a man in his late 50s with a face like worn leather and eyes that seemed too deep-set, offered a thin, almost apologetic smile. No small talk. Fine by me. I just wanted to be home. I slumped into the back seat, the worn fabric smelling faintly of old cigarettes and damp earth. The engine rumbled to life, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the floor. Silas pulled away from the curb, and we were off. My eyes were heavy, but something quickly pricked at my tired haze. He took a right turn where I expected a left, veering off the main thoroughfare that led directly to my apartment. "Shortcut?" I mumbled, half asleep. Silas merely grunted, a sound that could have been agreement or dismissal, and kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The main road quickly became a memory. We turned down a side street, then another, the asphalt growing rougher, the streetlights spaced further apart. The city felt like it was shedding its skin, revealing something far older and more decayed underneath. The buildings we passed were wrong. Empty factories with broken windows stared like dead eyes. Grime-encrusted storefronts with rusted grills pulled down, long forgotten, displaying only the vague outlines of what they once sold beneath layers of dirt and ancient protests. This wasn't my city, not the one I knew. A cold seeped into the car, a damp chill that smelled of stagnant water, and something metallic, like old blood. I pulled my jacket tighter. My phone, which had been at 7%, now showed no service. I tried to rationalize it. Bad reception in this forgotten industrial area. But a prickle of unease started to crawl up my spine. I glanced at Silas in the rearview mirror. His eyes, fixed straight ahead, were unblinking, like a doll's, reflecting the dim, flickering streetlights in a way that made them seem black, bottomless. He cleared his throat, a dry rasp. "They always take the shortcut," he murmured, his voice surprisingly soft. "Most don't seem to mind." "Mind what?" I asked, my voice edged with a sudden sharp fear. Silas didn't answer. Instead, he hummed a tune, a discordant, wandering melody that scratched at my nerves. The streetlights outside began to flicker in an unsettling rhythm, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like grotesque puppets on the peeling walls of the abandoned buildings. A figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, seemed to glide past a darkened alleyway, disappearing before I could properly focus. My heart hammered against my ribs. We passed what looked like a playground, rusted swings creaking in the non-existent wind, but the sandpit was a deep, unsettling black, and the slide was twisted into a grotesque spiral shape that defied physics. I blinked, rubbing my eyes. When I looked again, it was just a pile of rubble. Just a trick of the light, I told myself, a trick of my exhaustion. But then Silas turned off what passed for a road. The car bumped and jostled over uneven ground, the low growl of the engine deepening. We were in a vast, empty lot, surrounded by skeletal structures that clawed at the bruised sky. No streetlights, only an unnatural, sickly gray glow from the horizon that painted everything in shades of ash and shadow. The air tasted of ozone and something rotten. The car slowed, then stopped. The engine died, plunging us into an unnerving silence, broken only by the frantic thud of my own heart. "We're here," Silas said, finally turning to face me. His eyes, in the faint, unearthly light, were indeed black, not reflecting anything, just absorbing, A thin, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. Your destination. I looked out the window, and then I saw them. Not buildings, not structures. These were things. Towering, hunched shapes, impossibly tall, their forms shifting at the edges of my vision, like colossal petrified entities watching us from the fringes of a world I never knew existed. Their surfaces seemed to be made of jagged, obsidian-like material, but also moved with a slow, grinding inevitability that suggested organic life, just on a scale too vast to comprehend. They were everywhere, surrounding us, silent and ancient. No, I whispered, pressing myself against the door. This isn't... I didn't order this. Silas chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. You ordered a ride, didn't you, passenger? And I delivered. He gestured vaguely at the impossible landscape. Some just need to see where the road truly leads. My hand fumbled for the door handle. It clicked open. I scrambled out, my legs weak, the ground beneath my feet feeling like cold, broken glass. I started to run. I didn't know where, just away. The rain had stopped. The air tasted of ozone and despair. I risked a glance back. The bruised blue car was gone. The immense, impossible forms remained, silent and colossal, revealing the true face of the world hidden beneath the thin veneer of light and order. I was still running, but I knew I'd never truly get away. Not from what I'd seen. Not from knowing it was always there, just beyond the right turn, waiting for the next passenger who took the shortcut. The city lights blurred into streaks of tired gold and crimson as I stared out the window of the taxi. Or what I thought was a taxi. My phone had died just as I hailed it, the app glitching out after a particularly crushing argument with my sister, and a day at work that felt like I was wading through treacle. I just needed to get home. Disappear. The car that pulled up wasn't a standard yellow cab, nor a bland Uber sedan. It was an older dark blue model, a make I couldn't quite place, but it had the familiar glowing plastic number on the roof. Close enough, I thought, desperation overriding caution. I yanked open the back door and slumped onto the worn leather seat. The interior smelled faintly of damp earth and something acrid, like old metal. Or maybe that was just my anxiety. The air felt unnervingly cold, despite the late summer humidity outside. Address? The driver asked. His voice was a low rasp, steady and devoid of inflection. 27 Elm Street, please, I mumbled, my head against the cool glass. He nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his head. I couldn't tell much about him in the dim light. Just a silhouette, broad shoulders, and a plain dark cap pulled low over his eyes. I noticed his name flickering on a small, unlit display on the dashboard. Elias. He pulled away from the curb, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. After a few minutes, I realized he'd taken a familiar turn, but in the wrong direction, away from my usual route home. Excuse me, I said, sitting up straighter. Aren't we going the other way? Elm Street is... The driver, Elias, simply met my gaze in the rearview mirror. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and seemed to hold an impossible depth. A shiver traced its way down my spine. Long day, huh? He rasped, his eyes returning to the road. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. My breath hitched. My exhaustion must have been obvious, but the specific phrasing felt pointed. Yeah, you could say that, I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. The city lights began to thin out, replaced by the flickering glow of older, more sporadic streetlights. The buildings outside weren't the familiar glass and steel towers, but low brick structures, then even older, dilapidated houses. Family squabbles, Elias continued, his voice cutting through the car's unsettling silence. They hit different. Always wondered why you let her get to you like that, Alex. My blood ran cold. Alex. I hadn't given him my name. I hadn't used the app. How do you know my name? I stammered, my heart beginning to thump against my ribs. Elias offered a faint, unsettlingly calm smile in the rearview mirror. It didn't reach his eyes. Some things just are known. He turned the steering wheel, the car gliding smoothly onto an even less familiar street. The rhythmic hum of the engine now sounded less like a machine and more like a slow, deliberate pulse. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Had he seen my phone screen before it died? No. I'd pocketed it immediately. Had I used the app before? But this wasn't an Uber. The car felt colder, the smell of damp earth stronger. That presentation didn't go as planned, did it? He murmured, as if discussing the weather. Always felt you were capable of more. That's why you pushed so hard. The words were a direct hit. I'd bombed a crucial presentation just hours ago, a failure I'd been replaying in my head all evening. This wasn't a guess. This was impossible knowledge. Paranoia began to bloom in my chest, a cold, suffocating flower. Outside, the streetlights gave way to an almost complete darkness, broken only by the car's headlights slicing through a thick, almost milky fog. The buildings I'd seen earlier had dissolved into indistinct shapes, then vanished entirely. We were driving on what felt less like a paved road and more like a gravel path, the tires crunching softly. You always tried to please them, didn't you? Elias went on, his voice a balm of unsettling certainty. Never quite felt enough for your father. That's why you chase that approval, even now. Even from strangers. Each word was a scalpel, peeling back layers of my carefully constructed defenses. My childhood, my deepest insecurities, things I barely admitted to myself, were laid bare by this phantom driver. My breath hitched, a silent sob catching in my throat. This wasn't a taxi ride. This was an inquisition. Where are we going? I whispered, my voice trembling. My original destination, my home, felt like a distant, irrelevant memory. Elias didn't answer immediately. He drove on, the fog growing denser, blurring the lines between earth and sky. The path we were on seemed to stretch endlessly before us, and behind us, the world I knew had simply ceased to exist. In the distance, through the swirling mist, I saw a faint, flickering light. Not a street lamp, not a house, but something ancient, almost ethereal. Finally, the path ended. We pulled up to a desolate, overgrown field. In the center, alone and stark against the swirling gray, stood a single gnarled, ancient tree, its bare branches reaching like skeletal fingers towards the unseen sky. The flickering light was just beyond it, a soft, sickly yellow glow. The silence was absolute, only the gentle tick of the engine cooling. Elias turned, his dark eyes finally meeting mine directly. They gleamed with an unnerving understanding. "This is where you're truly headed, isn't it?" he said, his voice softer now, almost empathetic. "Where all the roads converge. Some rides aren't about going home, Alex. They're about finding out where you truly belong." My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. What is this place?" I choked out, a cold dread seeping into my bones. He gestured vaguely towards the gnarled tree, then to the flickering light beyond. "The end of one journey, the beginning of another. You just needed a push." With a soft click, the passenger door unlocked. "Your fare is paid." I stumbled out, my legs weak, my mind reeling. The air outside was impossibly cold, biting at my exposed skin. The light from the car's headlights seemed to shrink, unable to penetrate the thick, oppressive fog around the tree. As I took a single, terrified step further into the field, the dark blue car smoothly backed up. Elias didn't even glance back. He simply turned the wheel, and the car silently, effortlessly, disappeared into the churning gray mist, leaving no trace behind but the chilling echo of his words and the vast, suffocating silence. I was utterly alone, shivering, standing in a place that felt both alien and intimately familiar, with the gnarled tree looming over me, and the faint, sickly light beckoning me further into a darkness that I suddenly, horrifyingly, recognized as my own.